Kadosh, Boker Or, Masechet Kiddushin Daf Samechet Amud Aleph 68a1. We were just speaking about that there's going to be, according to everybody, that if a person has relations with a nidah, which means obviously it's his own wife, that she's a nidah, that even though there's karet, or with the sotah, which the sotah basically was that he suspected his wife of infidelity, and then afterwards, when he on the way to take her to the Bet HaMikdash, which she's prohibited to him until she drinks the waters, he has relations with her. According to everybody, it's not going to be a child, it's not going to be a mamzer. So Chizkiah comes and he says, it says in the pasuk, Utini da ta'alav. What does it mean, Utini da ta'alav? It means that even during the time that a woman's a nidah, he could get married to her, which means, let's say there's chupat nidah, meaning a person's getting married and the wife becomes a nidah, and now he's getting married to her. It's still going to be a good kiddushin. That means even though right now she's an erivah, because she's a nidah, he can't have relations with her, but still it's going to be a good kiddushin. So says the Gemara, let us see. I have a choice. I could say, are we going to say that it's going to be kiddushin tofsim? I could apply this case to a nidah, that kiddushin do tofes, or I could apply all the other arayot to a chotisha, to the sister-in-law, to the wife's sister, that it's not kiddushin tofsim. So my chazita de mekashta la chotisha. Why are you coming and applying to all the arayot to the case of a chotisha, and why are you not doing it to the nidah? So answers the Gemara, kula v'chumra. You have a leniency and you have a stringency. Lechumra makshina. Here we want to go after the chumra, which means it is. By the nidah, it's a leniency. The kiddushin is tofsim, even though right now she's an erva. By the chotisha, it's a stringency. That the kiddushin is not tofsim, it's a chotisha. So therefore, I prefer to be makesh, to make a kesh, to be makish, to the chumra and not to the kula. Rav Acha bar Yaakov comes and he says, no, it's a kal v'chomer. We learn it from a kal v'chomer, from a yevama. That means all the other arayot that en kiddushin tofsim, we learn it from a kal v'chomer, from yevama. Just like uma yevama she belav. Remember that a woman that she's a shomeret yavam, which means she has to wait for the yavam. If she goes to the shuk and she gets married to somebody else, it says in the Torah, lo tieh eshet hamet achutza lishzah. The wife of the met should not go outside to the shuk to a strange man. But over there, it's a lav, it's a negative commandment. There's no karet or anything. But there, lot of sama kiddushin, there's no kiddushin to somebody else. So if right now you have a negative commandment, and there's no karet and no betin punishments of killings and everything, and still you're going to say that there's no kiddushin tofsim, kavachomer, that if there's a case of karet, which is all the other arayot and all the, like sister, mother, daughter, and all the, so kavachomer and kol sheken, that it's not going to be to kiddushin tofsim. So ask the Gemara, if so, nami. 1 second. What about all the other women which have a negative commandment? All the other women that have a negative commandment, kiddushin if tofsim. Why? Maybe be'emet, kiddushin should not be tofsim. So Amar Papa says, chayve lavin ktivu, by regular chayve lavin, it's written mefurash, ki tiena li sheten hashim achat tova v'achat tznuah. When you're going to have 2 wives, one that you like and one you don't like. What does that mean? In front of Hashem, there's somebody that's loved and somebody that's hated? Because ki'ilu, it's mashma that when a person's going to have it, but it's in front of Hashem, not in front of the person. Ela rather ahuva b'nisuya. So it's not in front of Hashem. It's in front of in her nisuin. And sinua b'nisuya. What does that mean? The Torah says that sometimes you're going to have nisuin which are going to be hated by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay? And still the Torah says, Kitiena, there's still Havaya, there's still Kiddushin. Which means even though Hashem doesn't like this Kiddushin, the Kiddushin is still Chal. The Kiddushin is still a good Kiddushin. So ask the Gemara, but according to Rabbi Kiva, that he says, En Kiddushin Tofsin B'chai Ve'lavin, Kitiena Maimukim. Remember, according to Shtat Rabbi Kiva, anytime that there's a negative commandment, there's no Kiddushin Tofsin. It doesn't exist. According to Rabbi Kiva, we don't pass like that, but that's according to Shtat Rabbi Kiva. So answers the Gemara, we're talking about an almanah to a Kohen Gadol, and like Rabbi Simai. What does that mean? By an almanah to a Kohen Gadol, kiddushin is tofsim, even though not by other lavin. And like Rabbi Simai, the time was learned to write, Rabbi Simai says, Mina kol Rabbi Kiva mamzer. Rabbi Kiva would make a mamzer out of everybody. When you imagine, Rabbi Kiva was being marbe mamzerim. Look how many mamzerim there were going to be. Because according to Rabbi Kiva, he was saying any negative command will be a mamzer. Right? He says, chutz me almanah le Kohen Gadol. Except for an almanah to a Kohen Gadol. Right? Sharei amrat Torah, but the Torah says, velo yechalel zaro be'amav. Chilulim will say. He only makes chilul, but not mamzerut. So therefore, according to Rabbi Kiva, the only exception to the rule would have been an almanah to a Kohen Gadol. The children are mamzerim, not mamzerim. But any other chayve lavin even, it's mamzerim. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Yeshevav, and according to Rabbi Yeshevav, Tamar that he says, Bo v'nitzvach al Akiva ben Yosef, go come and let's scream on Akiva Yosef that he was Omer, kol she'en lo bia v'Yisrael, anybody that cannot get married to Yisrael of Rav Lamzer. So Hanicha, this is good according to Rabbi Yeshevav. Ila pukav l'Simai Kativ is going to come to exclude from Yisimai, Shapir, so then it's going to be good then. Right? Because remember, according to Rabbi Yisimai, there's one case that there's not going to be a mamzer. But according to Eleitam, but if you're going to tell me that Shiva is talking about another shita, so he says, even in a positive commandment, what's the case then? Right, the kitiena, that there's going to be a good kiddushin. So says Gemara, bebeula lekohen gadol. Not an almanah to a kohen gadol, because an almanah to a kohen gadol is going to be a love, but a beula to a kohen gadol. Remember, a kohen gadol can only get married to a betula, to a virgin. It says, "V'hu isha b'vtulea yikach." So if he's going to get married to a beula, he's transgressing a positive commandment. If he gets married to an almanah, it's a negative commandment. But if he's getting married to a beula, which means not a virgin, so it's a positive commandment that he's transgressing. Why? Because it's a mitzvah to say, which is not equal to everybody. And since it's not equal to everybody, that's why it's still going to be a good kiddushin. So says the Gemara Rabbanan, and according to the rabbis, that they come and they say that we're talking about sinuah is chayve lavin. Why do we say that it's negative commandment? Maybe it's a positive commandment. So says the Gemara, Hani chayve aseh b'maynihu. What's the chayve aseh? He says, Shtehen mitzriot v'shtehen sinuot. He says, if we're talking about kitina l'ishte nashim, he has two wives, and they're both mitzriot. So they're both hated in their marriage. If one of them is a mitzrit and one of them is Israelite, so you need two of them from the same nation. Shte nashim me'am echad bainam. And if you're talking about a beula to a kohen gadol, where does it say kitiena lekohen? It doesn't say that. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Kiva, according to Rabbi Kiva, how does he mifaresh the pasuk b'chayvei aseh in positive commandments? He says, "Bal kol chachshav kelikra dehavi dachik umuki v'noshe." He says, for sure you have to leave the pasuk, right? Which means that we have to explain the pasuk that we're talking about b'chayvei aseh. So, for example, one of them was a mitzrit and one of them is Israelite, and even though they're not coming from the same nation, or a beula to a kohen gadol, and since there's chayvei lavin and kedushim tofsim, so mila the pasuk of sinuah is only talking about chayvei aseh, even though it's a dochak. Okay, and that's the way that you have to explain it according to Shtat Rabbi Kiva. Meaning, when it says kitiena, it means that it has to be a kiddushin. But now, what's the case? If you tell me kitiena and it has to be a kiddushin, even if it's going to be chayvei lavin, so then it's perfect. That means even though you're transgressing an avera, as long as there's no karet and not mitab betin, death penalties of betin, so it's going to be a good kiddushin. According to Rabbi Kiva, there's no kiddushin tofsim on chayvei lavin. So then, how do you explain the pasuk then? So he says, obviously, it has to be the chayvei aseh on a positive commandment, even though it's a dochak, right? It's not the best to say that. Okay, next, two dots. The two dots on the bottom of Masechet Aleph says, "V'chol mi she'en alav v'lo al achirim kiddushin," right? Avlad kemotah. So anytime that you're going to have that there's not going to be kiddushim, so then the child is going to be like her. So what is that? A goya. So somebody goes with a goya, the child is a goy, or a shifcha. So the child is a shifcha or an eved. Okay, shifcha kenanit. Menalan, how do we know this? By shifcha kenanit. Ravuna says, the pasuk says, "Shvu lechem po im hachamor." Ama domeh lechamor. What does that mean? When we say "Shvu lechem po" with the chamor, it doesn't mean with the chamor, but rather it's the am, which is domeh lechamor, which means that there's dimayon between the eved and the behemah. So Ashkechan, we found over there that the lo tafsi b'kiddushin, that there's no kiddushin. Samechet amud bet 68b. Vlada kemotah, that the child is going to be like her. Menala, and how do we know? Meaning, okay, there's no kiddushin, but how do you know the child is going to be like her? So the pasuk says, the woman and her children, meaning when a person takes in an eved ivri and he gives to the eved ivri a shifcha kenanit, the woman and the children belong to the master always. Why? Because the children belong to the woman. The children are like the woman. And it's just like the woman was a shifcha kenanit, the children are like avadim or shifchot. And therefore the children, so that's a pasuk to show not only that there's no kiddushin, but rather that the children are like her. What about a goya? Nochri menalan. How do we know that if somebody goes with a goya? How do you know that the child is a goy? So Amarka, the pasuk says, "Velo titchaten bam." They're not allowed to come and to get married to them, which means there's a negative commandment that you're not allowed to get married to the goya. Ashkechan, that's the pasuk is going to teach us lo tasibeh kedushin. So fine, you're not allowed to get married, but how do you know that the child is still going to be like the mother? So says the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan ben Shimon ben Yochai, says Rabbi Yochanan ben Shimon ben Yochai. Tamarka, it says a pasuk. Because that Nochri is going to take away the child from me. Bincha ba mi-Israelit, only a child that comes from a Jew is called your child. Ve'em bincha ba min-ovedet kochavim kol bincha, but the child that comes from a Goya is not called your child. Ela bena, it's her child, it's not your child. So therefore, since there's a pasuk mefurash saying that it's only going to be your child if it's coming from a Yisraelit, but it's her child if it comes from a Goy, a Goya, so therefore a child that comes from a Goya is a Goy. So Amar Ravina comes and he says, Shema mina, we'll learn from here, Ben bitecha, haba min oved kochavim, kol mincha. Even the son of your daughter, that comes from, that means you have a Goy that gets married to a Jew. A Goy that got married to a Jewish woman. That child is still your child. That style is mityaches after the mother. Why? Because she's Jewish. So Neima Kasav Ravina oved kochavim b'babetzel v'mamzer. So 1 second. Does Ravina hold that a Goy or an Eved that has a relation with the Bat Yisrael, the child is a mamzer? So says the Gemara, no. It's not a kasher. It's not 100% kosher, but it's mamzer lo avi. It's pasul. He's called pasul. Meaning, when you have a child which comes from a relationship between a Goy and a Jew, the child is Jewish because it's bincha. The mother's Jewish, the child's Jewish, but he's pasul. He's not a mamzer, but he's pasul. Okay, so says the Gemara, Hahu b'shiva goyim tiv. When it's written, v'lo titchaten bam, those are only the 7 nations. Meaning, how do we know that it applies to every goy? Right? Shalom omenanan. So says the pasuk, Kamarka ki asira bincha lerabot kol hamesirim. That they're going to remove your child from them. That includes everyone. Remember that what happens is that when the goy, right, or the goya we're talking about, she has more of an influence on the child, and therefore what happens is that the child will be removed from you. So Hechal Rabbi Shimon, this is good according to Rabbi Shimon that he's going to be Doresh Tama Dikra. But according to the Rabbanan, that they're not going to be Doresh Tama Dikra, the Tamim of the Pasuk. Right? What are you going to say then? Because when it says Ki asira bincha me'acharai, right, there's no extra words to include other people. Right? When you say Ki asira bincha me'acharai, you're trying to say Lirabot kol hamesirim, it's like extra. What do you mean extra? The Tamim. Right? Because according to him, the reasoning of the Isur, it's the reason of the Isur. But here, if you're not going for the reason of the Isur, you're not going after the ta'amim, the ta'am, the reason. So what are you going to say? Samakar, the pasuk says, "V'acharken tavo le'uvalta." It says, "V'ayta lecha leisha," which means that to do with the eshet ifatoar, right? When it's talking about a woman that she was conquered, right, in the war. So it says afterwards you're going to come and have relations with her, and then she's going to be for your wife. V'ayta lecha leisha is kiddushin. So at the beginning there was no kiddushin. Now there's only kiddushin. So ashkechan de lo tasiba kiddushin. Right, but that's only there's no kiddushin. How do we know the child is like her? So Amakar, the pasuk says kitiena leish v'yaledulo. Kolecha dekarina bekitiena. Whenever there's kiddushin, so then v'yaledulo. When there's no kiddushin, there's no v'yaledulo. Which means since there's no kiddushin with a goya, so therefore there's no children, but there's no v'yaledulo. It's not for him. So Yahachi, if so, shivcha nami. Also shivcha, you should say the same thing. You're right, 100%. We could also learn from here, from shivcha. We could also learn from this pasuk. That means we don't have to learn it from the shivcha, from the Rahishav Yeladea Tiyaladonea. We could also learn from this pasuk, and there's no problem. Elahishav Yeladea Tiyaladonea Lamali. Why do I need it then? The Tanya, for another case, we're going to go to the Mishnah Sanchtet Amud Aleph 69a. Haomel shivchatov. Somebody comes and he tells us shivcha. Hareat bat chorim uvladach eved. You are a bat chorim, but your child is an eved. Havlad kemotah. The child is like her. So if she goes out free, he also goes out free. Chachamim say no. It's good. The mother goes out free and the child is still a slave. What is it coming to learn from here? Rava comes and he says, Mishum Shneimar is not going on, right? He comes and he says, not going on the words of on what we just said before, on Chachamim. Whether Rabbi Yosef Gilileh, that he says that even the child is going to be freed. So he says, we learn from here from the Pasuk, that basically there's a kesh, there's a juxtaposition between the Yeladim and the Shivcha. So therefore, as long as the woman is going to stay a Shivcha, the children are going to stay Avadim. But if the woman is not going to be a Shivcha, so then the child also goes out free with the woman. And we're by the Mishnah, Samachtet Mudalef. Have a wonderful day.